Hello, 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 and welcome back to an episode of the UV Effect podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Jordan, and of course, here another case study for you today. Today's case study is with a young lady named Kristen. She is a student studying to become a physical therapist, and she is also a podcaster. I was actually recently on an episode of her podcast, Young, Black, and Real, her latest episode, last week, Wednesday. So be sure to check that out. I'll put a link in all the different places where this podcast is so you can check out that episode. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into this episode. Kristen is a very smart young lady. As you'll learn here that, she's very kind and open and, kind and positive. She struggles with the open part, which we'll show you in a little bit. Not so much about openness, like authenticity. She's actually very okay with that. But she struggles talking about herself in certain ways. So I had to kind of pull a little bit to get a good amount out of her, but I think that the conversation was good. I'm sure it can be relatable to a lot of people, including myself, who are not as comfortable talking about themselves and making it feel like they're almost bragging about themselves. She struggled with that, and I struggled with that a lot when I was younger, and I still deal with that now. I've gotten better, but I think this is a relatable conversation and probably relates to a lot of people who are a lot more quiet, but still have something important to offer in the world. So I'm excited to hop in and we can just jump right in without further ado. But I will also add, be sure to like and share and subscribe to the podcast. And as well, if you'd like to be a part of the research that I'm doing here on the show, be sure to go to GabrielleJordanInspires.com/research to submit an application. All right, let's jump in. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to fast forward a bit into step one, identify, as we get into the beginning of this episode. Just a little bit of background again. Kristen, like I shared, is in school studying to become a physical therapist, and she loves it. She loves the job and what she's studying. When I asked her to describe her relationship with her current profession, she shared that, it motivates her. The work motivates her. The education motivates her. And in her profession currently, or in studying, she actually works at a couple practices, and she mostly works with the patients, both physically as well as emotional support, like a therapist, a confidant, as she says. And she loves that aspect as well. So in this first moment, I'm going to share with you guys one of my favorite questions and her response to it. This is one of my favorite questions to ask during the research because I feel like the answer is twofold. But before we get into that, let's hear her response.
On a scale of 1 to 10, though, if you had to leave this profession, how comfortable would you be with leaving it?
See, I've already had this thought in my head before. And that's kind of how I realized that I really do enjoy it. So I would say I'd be at like a 2.
A 2, okay. And so you said, how come? Is because you just really love what you're doing? Or?
Yeah, because I had thought about it. So this is like my second time applying to PT school. So I had to really think about whether or not I loved this in order to reapply. And I started looking at other jobs and like nothing gave me that joy that PT gave me. So,
gotcha.
The range of responses that I get with this question are pretty drastic. Whether they're entrepreneurs, whether they're people that are very invested in their, job or career, or whether they're in, these part-time jobs. Some people, even though they're the most invested in their work, and they are like, yeah, 10, I could leave my job like that. No problem. And some people, they're like Kristen here, or like 1, 2, or 3, or like they care about their job, or they are comfortable in their job and they don't want to leave it. But I love this question. I asked this question, like I said, for 2 reasons. One, it's important to see, how much joy, that you find from your job and from what you're doing in your work. And then for Kristen, for example, with her response being a 2, because she finds a lot of joy in what she does, because she loves it, then on the other hand of that, like the second reason why is then to start figuring out why. Okay, so why do they love this? To start kind of dissecting, where that joy is, why it's important to them. And then hopefully, by the end of it all, this will start to kind of unpack for them other areas, of work that could give them just as much joy, other potential areas of things that they could do that could also be fulfilling based off of that answering that why you find joy in something, why something, or even why you're good at something. And this is really the key to step 1, identify what we're searching for is where your potential actually lies. And I'll just give you a hint. It's not external. It's internal.
I am curious, you had given working with patients a 5, and you gave being a confidant and a therapist a 5 for enjoyment.
Cutting in real quick, we are jumping into this next moment where I had just finished asking her to rank out of 5 her enjoyment and aptitude for different aspects of her profession, things that she does in her profession. And in this moment here, I'm pointing out these 2 specific aspects of her profession that she gave a 5 for enjoyment. Both of them, she gave a 5 for enjoyment. And I wanted to ask her to dig in a little bit deeper as to why.
What do you feel like contributes to that? Like, because both of those have to do with working with like the people, with them, maybe helping them with something. What do you feel like you contribute to that? Like, what attribute or ability are you offering?
I would say I'm a very good listener and a pretty apathetic person. And I always try to bring positivity. So even if, they may not be feeling the best, I allow them to say how they feel without, bringing any judgment or anything like that. And then I also try to uplift without being dismissive.
Okay, so for having her dig into that a bit more, I was able to pull some additional information from that. So in this point, I'm trying to help her identify some of her internal abilities in order to figure out from there which ones are innate gifts, natural abilities. And so from her kind of digging into these aspects of her work that she enjoys, I was able to pull 2 potential, or actually 2 internal abilities, and 3 innate gifts, and that was empathy, or empathetic, encouraging, and compassionate. And then so from that we had our final list of internal abilities, and they are introspective, open-minded, intuitive, vulnerable, listener, empathetic, encouraging, and compassionate. From there, we went through and they were able to narrow down which of these were innate gifts, and we were able to figure out her comprehensive list of innate gifts, or at least the ones we were able to find, which we're working with for the rest of the research.
So these are the innate gifts that we find from you then. Introspective, a listener, empathetic or empathy, encouraging. I'm still, my brain still wants to mess with that word, so I'll do it on my own time, but.
Cutting in once again. So I was, the word encouraging we were trying to mess with, mostly because I felt like encouraging felt more of an external action rather than an internal ability. And so I was trying to figure out a better word that we could use to describe the internal ability that allows her to be encouraging. And we actually ended up settling on supportive as a potential word. Placeholder word, I think is actually a good one as well. So,
and then compassionate was your other one.
So yeah, that's her innate gifts list. And before we move on to step 2, define, I had her answer this question, basically telling me how she finds that her innate gifts allow her to operate when they are all working together for her. Like, what does it allow her to do? And so her answer is really good. And once we hear that, we'll go ahead and skip on over to step 2, define.
I would say all of those things I guess, combined together, I think allows my brain to operate in a more accepting way. Being able to, accept people for who they are, and even be accepting of myself and being kind to myself. I think with me being introspective, I think about things, think about like what may cause me to act in a certain way, allowing myself to then, as I go through life, being able to listen to my body and respect what it is that it's telling me, and then being, compassionate and empathetic to myself.
All right. So, actually that answer was, you guess what I'm going to say next? Was a window. Yeah, it was a window into her unique value. And it becomes, you get to see a little bit more of that here in step 2, define. So without further ado.
Okay, so let's get into it. The first question, would you consider yourself to be a valuable individual?
Yeah, I think I would be.
Yeah? Why was the hesitation?
I don't know. I guess I just had to think about it.
Okay. What were you thinking about? Just curious.
I guess where I might see my value.
Would you consider yourself to be a valued person?
From my perspective, I guess I would say I don't think so.
Why is that?
I think sometimes when you think of if you brought value, like people will tell you, and I don't know if I've ever actually been told.
Interesting. Okay.
So I don't really see it like that way. Do I feel like I've brought value? Yes, but have I been told? Not necessarily.
Okay, so this was really interesting, this response, because like I said before, most of the time when I've done this process with people, most of the people I've done this with are, entrepreneurs, people that are, pretty invested in their career, and they feel like they are, doing what they love in a sense. And so her response kind of caught me off guard immediately, because usually I'm so used to people being like, oh, yeah, I provide impact. I'm a valuable person because I do this and I do that and I do this. And so her saying that, she's never actually heard anyone really tell her how she's valued was really interesting. And I'm actually really curious of how many of you all have experienced that yourself. Like, if you think about it, if you were doing this process together, which the option's still on the table, GabrielleJordan.com/research. But no, if you were doing this research with me and I asked you that question, do you find yourself to be a valued individual? Could you pinpoint why you would say yes? What can you say that, yes, I am valued because people say this and say that? Or are you maybe like Kristen, who, no one's ever actually told her, explicitly how she is valued, That was really interesting. And as we go throughout this section, you'll see that it's something that needs to be unpacked, and it does get unpacked. For instance, in this next moment, we kind of dive into that here when I'm asking her a question about what people connect to about her.
I think I'm a pretty positive person. I try to have a good outlook on life.
Let's think a little bit deeper in that too, is like thinking about like your friendships and relationships and things like that. I know you said that people don't necessarily, you haven't really heard a lot of feedback in terms of like value and stuff like that, but maybe just thinking about how, like, when you're with a friend or like when you're talking with people, like what level do people like vibe with you or connect with you on? Like, what do you find people like, not just like why they talk to you, but like why they stay and why they come back, and maybe why they are asking you for advice about things or why they talk to you?
I feel like that's a hard question to ask because I don't know. I feel like that's more on them. Well, like, I don't know what their thought process is on why they want to be around me. I just feel like I'm a pretty, and I get told that I'm a pretty chill person. Like, I'm not really one to bring too much drama. Like, I just kind of stay in my own lane. I don't know. I guess that's why they like me. I don't know.
The question is an interesting one because obviously we're not in the brains of our friends or family or the people that we know. We don't exactly know why it is exactly why they like us unless they've told us, or exactly why they connect to us unless they've told us explicitly, which is a point in itself, obviously, because we just said she hadn't really heard a lot of these things verbally from the people that she knows. But the question itself is really meant to help to see your own perception, right? To gauge your own perception of what you find people receive about you, what people connect to about you, and even more so, what you give that people receive, which is important to recognize because, of course, this section is about defining your value. And I genuinely believe that the way that your value is ever seen, though our value is inherent, the way that our value is seen is through how it is received or given, which is the impact. And so, that question is to gauge that. It's to gauge what we give and what we perceive is received. But again, of course, her difficulty with answering this question once again lies within that same, thing that we dealt with in the question before. She hadn't really heard this verbally so much of, what people connect to, how she is valued. So right here, I'm really starting to see how important that verbal confirmation is to how a person even sees their own value or even recognizes value within themselves.
I don't know. I feel like the main thing for me is that I'm present.
Okay.
I feel like that's the biggest. I think maybe that's why people stay, because I'm there. Or like I feel like I'm just a very caring person, and so I give.
That's good. So when do you feel like you're not able to be that person, like present?
I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's just a natural thing for me. Unless you give off a vibe that you would try and take advantage, then I'll be a little bit more guarded.
Okay.
But I think for the most part, it's just an innate thing for me. It's not really something I think about. I think it's just something I naturally do.
But look here, that was really important. Because even without that verbal confirmation from the world, she was still able to recognize something that she found valuable about herself. We don't always need verbal confirmation. We don't need verbal confirmation from the world for our value. It's important. It helps us to refine it, to understand it. But like I always say, our value is inherent, which means it's there. It's always there. We just have to be able to look and to see it and to use it and to perceive it and be willing to recognize it when it is used, even without the verbal confirmation from the world. So I think that's just a little gem there, because I think a lot of times people like to rely on other people to tell us who we are, to confirm who we are, even to remind us who we are. And that's not always a bad thing. But when it becomes our crutch, when we decide to rely on other people to understand ourselves, we are missing a lot about ourselves, because nobody is going to understand us as well as we do. We are in these bodies, and if we don't understand ourselves better than other people understand us, we have a lot of learning to do. And so now at this point, as we're getting into the final statement portion of all of this, getting her final unique value, I wanted her to elaborate more on that impact that she makes in people's life and help her to recognize that value for herself, even without the verbal confirmation. And so I was taking it through the lens of what she was saying about how she's a very calm and positive person, and how that also correlates with her innate gifts. And so I'm just asking her to push a little bit further and seeing how that makes an impact in people's lives.
You're saying that, being calm and positive, you feel like makes an impact on somebody. What does it do? What does it do for them? What does it leave them with?
I think with the being positive part, it can boost them to do whatever, honestly. I think it gives them a boost. Like, I think some people need like that positive person in their life that can, help them or show them that they can do or achieve whatever it is that they want. And I obviously can't do it for them, but knowing that they have support there, that they can,
What you said there was good, especially that aspect of support. You'll see that will come up again when in the final statement in her unique value. But as we were continuing to talk, I still felt like she didn't quite see that value, or at least really see how it made an impact, right? Really seeing how it's brought to fruition in the world and how it, helps people, and how it changes people. And, and as we continued to talk, I had realized this because she had shared that quite literally that, she doesn't really see how she makes any kind of very important impact in the world at this point. She was saying how, when she works, she does good job and she really helps her patients, but in terms of impact, she just kind of said, it's a smile, when I smile at them, it just makes them feel better. And and I wanted to push her, and I wanted to see if there was any more, because we all make more of an impact in people's lives than just through a smile. That does make a mark for sure, but I think that really reduces the quality and value in our lives, and what value and quality we bring in other people's lives. So as we continued talking, and I kept asking her questions, she shared some information that really shared why she sees or even reduces that impact and that value that she has to a smile.
In my life right now, I'm just going to be honest with you. I feel like I tend, and I would say my parents and a lot of people that I'm with would say the same, that I tend to downplay a lot of the things that I do, because I feel like it's just what I do. So maybe I do more. I don't know, because it's not that significant to me.
Okay, so what is it that you're downplaying then?
Like how I guess I affect others. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Like I just kind of go live my life and do what I do, but I don't really know how. I don't really know how I can explain if it's really truly made an impact on anybody.
Okay, so do you find that whatever comes from this will be important at all? You can be honest. It's not going to hurt my feelings.
I think it'd be cool to see. Mm-hmm. Because it's not really something I think about.
Because I think that there might be a disconnect, and I'm trying to figure out if there is. This is because that is really important in terms of what it is that we're trying to discover here. And at the end of this, the point of this is to understand your design, right? I strongly believe that, just like in nature, how everything has its purpose, its function, and then what comes from that makes little impacts throughout throughout the world, right? Yeah. Human beings have that same thing. We have individual and unique functions, ways that we operate in the world that are just a little bit different than the next person, right? Yeah. And it does something just a little bit different, and so. Why that impact is important, and being able to kind of recognize that thing, even if it seems small, it is big, because no thing is incredibly small, or no small thing is actually as small as we realize or as we think. And so it's really important to look at the things that we do that are consistent in our lives, that we find affects people consistently. And I think it's hard to figure out what that is, only because it'll look different, right? For one person, you think, oh, I just made them smile. For another person, oh, I just listened to them. Another person, oh, I just, I made a poem and it made them feel something, right? It looks different on the outside, but what we're getting to is that at the very core of it, it's something that you are doing consistently that has a different effect. So why trying to find this impact, and putting together your innate gifts and this impact is so important, is because we're basically trying to find that root of the effect that you have in people's lives. What you do, that's a part of your makeup. That's a part of your design. That's a part of your purpose. And then, and understanding that you can you can act and move in ways where you are doing things with intention, right? You're doing things that will intentionally make a positive impact in people's lives and affect people in a positive way through what you've been designed to do, right? And be.
I guess it just becomes harder because I don't know, like, I don't know.
Don't know.
Like, if something that I do deem to be small, like, I don't know that if it actually is important until somebody says, like, oh, like, that was something big. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I didn't know.
So with all of that said, it was made clear that verbal confirmation was needed for her, especially in order to see that impact. She might have been able to recognize value, what she offers, but without hearing it, without hearing how it actually impacted another person's life verbally, it was absolutely hard for her to recognize that. And of course, that makes sense. And so I decided that before we move forward with the final statement, writing everything out, that I would give her a little bit of homework. I told her before we do everything, I told her that we'd end today's session and in leaving that I would just need her to go and talk to, 2 or 3 close family members and old friends and just ask them about how she's impacted their lives. Like, in what ways has she changed or affected them in a positive way? And so with that, she'd come back and share that with me, and then we could finally do the final aspects of the statement.
Okay, so I guess, like, what I've gathered from what they said was more of, like, I bring value in how you could say, more so better their life by just being a genuine person and a very honest person, and bringing them, they said that I'm bring laughter in a positive light. So
yeah, this is when we came back with step 3, embrace, and I had her share with me what her friends and family said about her. And they said that, she brings positivity or laughter and a positive light, which actually lines up quite a lot with what we had discussed before, which was great. One thing that wasn't said before that came up this time around was more so of this impact aspect. And this came from one of her friends, and she said that she was great at just being moral support, right? She's able to help her through a situation and be there for her. And that word support, right, comes back up again. I had said before that was a little bit of a window, that was going to be important before. It still is going to be important. That support, that moral support, was a big aspect of what she shares with people and how it impacts them.
Do you feel like that's how you operate best, or would you say that there's anything else? Like, for like, that's the way that you've impacted them in that way. But would you say that that's like, that's the way that you tend to operate best, and when you're working and impacting people, or just like trying to be a positive person in someone's life?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I try to be just a positive person in general. And I'm always kind of the one, like, even when there's maybe awkward moments or like gets tense, I'm usually the one to like kind of break the intensity of it all. So I would say that that would my role.
Gotcha.
So this was great, but for me, and what this process is working to uncover is unique value. And when I was hearing her response here, I was kind of like, okay, but a lot of people do impact people in this way. A lot of people are present themselves in this way and help people in this way, being positive or being humorous. And so I wanted to see how this is uniquely portrayed through her. Like, how does her individuality allow her to create this something that's distinct, like a reason that people come to her, a reason why people talk to her. Of course, we're going to find similarities in one another, but there's also differences, and those differences is what makes us valuable. So in order to dig just a few feet deeper, I just asked her about if she sees this value, if this impact comes through in her professional life as a physical therapist.
for the physical therapy aspect, I feel like that part of me is why I guess enjoy physical therapy, because when you're a physical therapist, people are coming to you not at the best time in their life, because they're usually coming in with some injury, something happened, so they're coming in pain. Mm-hmm. And so just trying to be that positivity in their life while they're going through and working through their injury or whatever it is that they're coming in for. So I feel like I guess you could say impact, mm-hmm. or my value is seen and is, what's the word I'm looking for? Amplified, I guess I'll say, in physical therapy. Like, I'm able to really use it there.
That was fantastic. That is where your impact should be amplified through your work. And so I loved hearing that. Like that it should be the goal, that we should be living a life in fields and careers and working in ways where our impact, where our value is being amplified. I love that. And so just to kind of top this off before we finally get that final statement, just wanted her to put the impact in her own words.
I don't know. I guess having somebody that's in true support of them can just help them accomplish. I don't know if there's anything that you can say specific, but just helps them accomplish or know that they can accomplish whatever it is that they set out to do.
All right. So with all of these pieces, and there are quite a few pieces, this one was a little bit tricky, I think, from what I remember. It was a little bit tricky because, the final statement kind of got spread out across 2 days. And there were a lot of moments I had to try and pull from to, try and find, remembering what she said and seeing how the pieces came together. But they really did. It really started to align quite clearly. You look about what she was saying in terms of her innate gifts and how they allow her to be accepting and open and to be without judgment, to be positive as well. And then we look at what she says about her impact, that it boosts them, but it allows her to support them in a way where they can trust in what they can do, trust in her to support them, but also trust in themselves, in what they can do. Right? She actually said it earlier. She was like, she knows that she can't do things for people, but through her support, they start to believe that they can, or at least they feel maybe more confidence in what they can do. Right? So, all of that was so good, and it brought us to her final statement, which was this: my unique value is authentically supporting an individual for the purpose of allowing them to trust in their potential. I think that's really special. Authentically supporting an individual, meaning honestly being there for a person, helping them, guiding them, supporting them, which again, that word supporting came back around. And then for the purpose of allowing them to trust in their potential. That I think is very special. To trust in their potential. I think a lot of people would need someone like her. Because a lot of people don't trust in what they have and what they can offer. They might see it. They might recognize it. They might see their potential and see that it can be used, but not trust in themselves to use it the best of their ability, not trust in themselves to be able to do the best that they can, or be what people need, or make the great marks that they want to make in the world, whatever it might be. And people need people that they can trust and that can help them trust themselves. So I think this is a very special, unique value. I mean, every unique value is special, of course, but just because of the trek that it took to kind of get to this and to help her to identify these things and define this for herself, I think being able to get to this statement, I look at it, I'm just like, a lot of people could use that. It just makes it even more special for me, I think, just because being able to then pinpoint that makes it more possible, I think. But that's just me. Obviously, it's up to Kristen to how she uses her unique value. And, how she chooses to move about the world. But she's already, she said through physical therapy, she's already moving about it. She's already amplifying her impact. And she shared earlier how she wants to open her own clinic and create a space for other Black physical therapists. I mean, then obviously talk about the podcast as well. And so hopefully with this statement, she can, continue to be intentional about it, continue to be intentional about helping people trust in their potential.
Well, I fully help them realize something within themselves that they are capable of doing, which will be unique to each person. So I would say those are like the main things, just being positive and helping them realize their, like we said in the thing, potential.
Yeah. And so with that takes us to the end of this week's episode of the UV Effect podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you related with Kristen and some of the things that we discussed, be sure to hop over to Instagram. Our Instagram's at the UV Effect, or my own Instagram, Gabrielle Jordan, INTL, and leave us a comment on this episode's post, letting us know how you connected with the episode, how you connected with Kristen, what you liked about it, any comments and thoughts. Also, be sure to check out Kristen's podcast, Young, Black, and Real, and be sure to check out my episode that I was on with her, which came out last Wednesday. Lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe to the UV Effect podcast to never miss another episode. And also, if you would like to be a part of the UV Effect research, you can go on my website, GabrielleJordanInspires.com/research, to submit an application, and you could be a part of this very conversation, identifying, defining, and embracing your very own unique value. So with all that said and all of that done, I will see you next Thursday for another